And so the book, To Think Sociologically, is about to take us into a new journey on nationalism, national state, identity, and the order of the society as we experience it. But before they do that, they've been stopping at a point that is as well important before we delve into these issues of who we are in a social context related to the state and what we identify with in values. Well, they are saying that life is basically a lot of challenges that has to be solved, some kind of problems we put down into minor problems and try to solve them along the way. And so by doing so, we are part of a huge community who are doing the same. But our ability to have the whole picture and to look at all the parts of what we want to solve is what sometimes is lacking in our way of dealing with life. Because what can be solved in one place can maybe present an issue in another. And so the idea of order, the order of life, becomes very important and central for looking sociologically at life as interaction in networks between humans. And that is a constant work that humans put into this. And many times it's like we see that society and individuals in it go to extreme measures and polarization in the way of solving the trouble we have. Like, for instance, if we say that a big trouble has arisen from the individuality and property ownership, and then the radical movement that would be or thought is eradicate all property ownership, and that's why you'll solve the problem. But by not looking at the whole picture, you will create another type of problem. And by not being able to distinguish between nature and culture, and the human nature in culture, and the culture in humans in nature, then you will not be able to do everything at once. Another example is that, well, we need people to feel a basic sense of being equal under the human rights, that global ethic we were talking about earlier. But at the same time, that can take away the motivation and incitement for a kind of run towards success and competition to get to the uniqueness of yourself and the goals you want to achieve. And so people can most basically lose some part of that that progression that could be in competition and trying to achieve something in life, as it has been for inventors, people who started companies and brought away and along new thoughts. All this can be lost if there is nothing really to provide for that success, if it doesn't matter and everyone is totally like the same, doing the same thing all the time. That won't give the space for that interaction that we need, where it is an asymmetrical power struggle at the same time. And so if you look at the tankers that we also mentioned earlier, the movers of the oil that makes everything run today, and the pollution they potentially can create along the way. And that pollution can also potentially be so damaging that it will damage a lot of life on Earth. And by doing so, well, in the end, it will become self-destructive. So what prevents it from being self-destructive is a kind of protection that those companies have to invest in and the movers of oil has to invest in. But if those regulations and orders become so tight and closed that there is no profit to be gained, we will lose all incentive for going on working on these issues. And maybe some would think, well, let the state run it all. And by letting the state run it all, you solve that problem of moving the oil. And by solving the problem of moving the oil, you create another one. And that is the big power and control of that central administration, the bureaucracy, as Max Weber had been talking about, and the total rationalization. It means distancing, the unpersonal relation that they would have to humans and people and citizens. And so from that arises another problem, that is the competition from other countries and places who wants to take over those means of control. They would not let that one state take it. They will also compete on it, and so we become again embroiled in a fight that is going to try and get those means of oil production and the power that we need back to where we want it to be. And so when we are trying to create order, there is a natural chaos in it, and that's why order has also to be taking into account the most probable outcome of that order and what is the most balanced way of looking at it. And that needs a lot of studies and difficulties, and then rises the word that's called experts. And we are in that time exactly where the experts have a lot to say on a lot of issues, because it's like we ordinary humans, when we are talking about these things, feel totally lost on the floor. We cannot really get this oversight on how the issues are running and what would be the most successful way of bringing like the oil around, and so avoiding side effects and all that. So we need the experts, the people who can run the economics and who can tell us about the political landscape and the sociological diversion, or what's going on in people's minds and in the communication between them. And so we need experts to tell us what is the right way to go and come, and they become the new like layer of priests who sit behind the line and sometimes even control those who have the power to make decisions, because they can present them with a kind of logic, and show them statistics, and show them research that is bound to take them in a certain direction. And so the rise of the class of the experts has also arisen some questions alongside with it in sociology. Is this a new upper class? Is this a new kind of untouched priesthood that people are going to yearn to and have to follow? These questions are very relevant in our times, because who are making actually the decisions? Those we are choosing, if we are choosing anyone. Maybe some places they are just choosing who's the strongest and has the biggest clan and power. But let's just go along the thought that it's our choices that makes the policies, which it's not totally true at all. There are so much in between who we vote for and how the policies are made that it doesn't always make sense and becomes somehow a charade. But because it's the last straw we have to hold on to as democracies, well, we keep holding on to it until it falters totally. But anyhow, that's the limitation of the human life between nature and culture that I'm trying to explain here. And so those experts become a big question mark. Are those people we are voting for or wanting to make the policies on our behalf really going in the way we need, or going in the way the experts are showing them? So when they want to exploit or use some kind of power they have, or resources, maybe digging for minerals somewhere or going out to sea fishing, they get all these kind of limitations because of this, because of that, you cannot, you can this. And when they're going to use money, they'll say, well, this will infect this and that. Maybe the inflation will go up. Maybe by doing this, you will lose another group of voters, and so on and so on. So a lot of speculation from these experts has actually made the world much more uncertain than we know of, because these experts are not always giving merely facts. They are also speculating. And so it becomes a big gambling place to gamble on one kind of policy or another, and taking the humans along in masses that are controlled and surveilled and put into order is a big thing. But that's exactly what's going on and what's happening around us in the world, as it seems from at least one perspective. And so this is like a pitch stop in between the stops in the book, where they are not really not really given it the time it needs, but it's basically just saying we are between the goods and the costs. It's like what you want to achieve has another side to it, and if you cannot get the whole picture, then something will create a new problem, and that new problem will need solving. And so, in that way, we are between nature and culture, and we're between what we understand as a human nature and human culture, and what we understand of humans in nature. And that's also part of what sociology has been struggling with. They mention here shortly that the distinction between nature and culture makes some things seem as if they are nature laws, and some places to become civilized and others uncivilized, depending on how they are going through with order and chaos and how they are dealing with nature. And so culture becomes everything we can cultivate and really put into place and control and change and have the power over, while nature is the wild, untamed. And today we seem to have gotten really far in taming nature, at least on the surface. We still have the space around us and the sea below us, and we are really going there right now in these years to dig and mine and get what we can out of that. And so what are we disturbing at the same time? And are these predictions really true, or is it just a kind of overzealous ecological scare that these people are trying to show us? And is the value of what we are digging into really valuable enough to make this cost? And so in between this, we are between order and chaos, nature and culture, what we can control and what is out of our control, expanding our territories as humans. And so the human-made elements has taken over. And that's what I usually try to mention from time to time, that this lady from Greenland, Anangwak, who went along with Knud Rasmussen, the Danish explorer, who tried to map Greenland and gather the stories of the Inuit people and made these very exciting and hard journeys, who also have been famous for. When he came to New York and he had her with him, he arrived and he wrote that the first thing she expressed when she saw New York, that in her eyes it seemed like a stone jungle. So the old nature, the jungle, the thing you couldn't really understand and dig through, is gone and now is surpassed or exchanged with a kind of stone jungle that we have to deal with. And that's very true. What an insight, what a kind of prophecy she looked into there just in one word. And so that stone jungle has become the new way of controlling nature, and it becomes the human-made elements in our life. And so when they say here that the human-made elements, they are in two ways important for us. They regulate the order in the context we're living in, and they orient us so we can choose what's relevant and irrelevant, what are particular motives and goals among an infinite number or a lot of numbers. And so you can try to imagine that natural order of the humans, well, it's something we can do something about, and that will entice some people to say, I want it differently. And so how much is it going to be possible not to disturb the order that which people has agreed to, or some people with power wants to be in a certain way? So the preferences of us and our choices can go to a great polarization. This is a very important topic to touch on, and that's what we have seen in history, kind of polarized changes between going in one direction, then in the total opposite direction. The people, whether they were few or as now very many, going in one direction and then in the maybe total opposite. It's like we are trying to balance out the effects of what we have been doing before we did it, after we did it as humans, and say, okay, we've been destroying nature, let's become overprotective of it now and limit the human activity really as much as we can and make everything in a way that it takes nature into consideration. And so later, if nature will be growing wild and out of our hands or limit our possibilities too much, we will be turning away from that way of thinking and say, well, this has gone far enough. Nature has survived, everything is well. We need the resources. It can also be a simple thing as using the mobile phone, how it has given opportunities and chances for people to connect and communicate in distance. At the same time, it has made people asocial and antisocial in some ways. And so you can have a person sitting with his mobile phone, not needing to connect with anyone else because all his connections are virtual and non-physical online. And so why do he need the person sitting around him in the airport or cafe or that particular place where he or she? And in that way, our ways of manipulating life and the culture especially have always these side effects of losing sight of what can be the consequences, what is the cost. And so when we discover these costs, and that has something to do with sociology, a lot to do with sociology and the way it works, because it is a presentation of the world as it looks, and thereby the experts, things they will light on and shed the light on is going to be very important for how the decisions are being made, while things they do not shed the light on, well, they stay in the dark, and we say, how has this gone by our views and faces? We didn't even know about it. We didn't even understand that there was such a thing as what can you say, ecology or control of the robots and IA and whatever it is. Well, we didn't really know a mechanism for governing economy that has been long lost, and so on. We tend to be blind to some spots and some other things, and that's why we get polarized many of the time. This is my interpretation of what I'm reading, of course. And so the order in our surroundings has its opposite in the order that is our actions. And it has an opposite in the other order that wants to take us in another direction. So if everything is really between nature and culture, it becomes also a fight over how to present and understand both the nature and the culture, the nature of the humans and the nature around the humans, the culture that the humans carries, and human culture in nature. And so these things become the place of fight, saying, well, we can do this and that, or we do not need it. So the humans can be in many times in difficulty getting access to what they want to do. And so we get into the next chapter or the next talk very much in depth in culture, nature, state, and territory, and the many phrases in sociology talking about how we go into this. What do we use of words, and what are the things that surrounds us that makes order possible, and at the same time makes the opposition and the change also possible. And it's about culture, and in culture there is both the language, the science, the way of understanding what we can call indexes and arbitrary qualities of things in themselves, and how things redundance on us and opposites and so on. So this was just to give a kind of understanding of where we are headed after leaving the previous chapters on our life and choices and how we manifest ourselves in society through our body and lifestyle and the signals we are sending and the things we are part of.